Okay, welcome everyone. Mashiach, you got the green light on both? Yes. Okay. So welcome everyone to Mashiach Matters class.
We are muted.
Oh, let me mute. I'm going to mute.
All participants are muted and they can unmute themselves.
Okay. Good morning everyone. Today is welcome to the Mashiach Matters class. Today is a super special day in that it is the 14th day of the month of Av, and it's leading us into the 15th day of the month of Av, which is a great holiday called Chamish Asa B'Av, Tu B'Av. And that's exciting. It is the most Mashiach day on the calendar possible. As we know that the 15th day of Av is a tikkun on Tisha B'Av. The Talmud tells us that the primary reason, the Gemara gives I think 6 or 7 reasons for the celebration of the 15th of Av. And the first and primary reason is that the 40 years when the Jewish people were in the desert, every year on Tisha B'Av, they would go they would dig themselves graves. And they would, because every year on Tisha B'Av, see, no one died during the year. And all the people that the decree was upon them that they have to pass away, they would dig themselves graves, go into the graves, and in the morning they would announce, let the living separate from the dead. It was a very horrible, situation. And this went on for 40 years. This went on for 40 years. In the last year, the people went into the graves on Tisha B'Av by night, and it was expecting to be, God forbid, a horrible day of mourning the next day, when all the people would all those who died, and so many families would be sitting shiva. But instead, everybody came up in the morning. So they thought that's strange. They thought maybe they miscalculated the wrong date. So they went into the grave a second time. So they continued going in every night until the 15th of Av. Thank you. When the 15th of Av arrived, and they saw that no one died again, so they realized that it was a full moon already. So that told them that the decree, the horrible decree that was then for the entire generation to die, was over. And that's why they celebrated. That's the first reason. And then the Talmud goes on to give a whole bunch of other reasons. And the Talmud says that there was no other holiday like the 15th of Av. Well, from this reason we see that Tisha B'Av is connected to, that the Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, is connected to Tisha B'Av because we're celebrating the ending of the decree of Tisha B'Av. And just like it was with the first generation, same it is with the general idea that Tisha B'Av was a day of mourning and a day of destruction, Tu B'Av ends Tisha B'Av. So if we're mourning the destruction of the temple, Tu B'Av is the most appropriate day for the rebuilding of the temple. So because and not only does it end Tisha B'Av, but like you see in that story, it revealed something about Tisha B'Av. It wasn't like a calamity hit the Jewish people. If it would have been a story like this, God forbid, there would have been a Magefa, there would have been a plague happening on Tisha B'Av. And people die for 6 days until the 15th of Av, and then they stop dying, so then that too is already a great thing. That the 15th of Av is like similar to Lag Bomer. The plague on the students of Rebbe Akiva ended. But here it goes much deeper than that. It's not that it ended. It revealed that even on Tisha B'Av there was no death. So ultimately, what Tu B'Av is going to do, it's going to flip over Tisha B'Av and reveal the light and the godliness and the Moshiach light that's in Tisha B'Av. That's Tu B'Av. Now, Kabbalistically, we know. So today I'm going to spend the class that we're going to be giving on this awesome day. And Be'ezras Hashem, we haven't done this for a few weeks. Be'ezras Hashem, next week, Thursday, we're going to go back to continuing Parshas Toldos, where we were holding, where we left off in our Mashiach Matters class. But in any case, the 15th of Av is like the greatness of every month. The 15th day, we know we have a full moon. And that's good news for the Jewish people because A full moon represents the greatness of the Jewish people, because the Jewish people are compared to the moon, and particularly it represents the kingdom of Malchus Beis David, the return of the Davidic kingdom, which is Mashiach. And so that's every month. In the middle of the month is a very powerful day. But on the 15th of Av, it is super powerful. Why? Because when the moon is full, it represents spiritually the idea of Aliyas HaMalchus. The Shekhinah is called Malchus, and when Malchus, the Shekhinah, rises, and when Malchus, the Shekhinah, rises higher to receive greater light from her fall. It's all connected. The Jewish people, the Shekhinah, the kingdom of David, of Malchus Beis David, it's all unified. It's all one nekuda, one point. And Aliyas HaMalchus is when Malchus rises up. So every 15th of the month that happens. But we always know there is a rule. The rule is Yerida Tzairech Aliyah. Whenever there is Chas v'Shalom a fall, if it's for the sake of an ascent. In God's world, in Hashem's world, where Hashem is perfect, and Hashem is beyond perfect, and Hashem just wants good, there can't be anything that is permanently bad and has a negative end goal. There's no such a thing as a negative end goal. It's always positive. And if there's any negativity, it's always so that the pain will lead to gain. That's always the rule. And that, based on that reasoning, the greater the pain, the greater the gain. So the greater the fall, the higher the rise. The darker the darkness, the brighter is the light that comes in the end. So since every month there is a fall, because the moon, the dwindling of the moon, the waning of the light of the moon in the second half of the month represents a certain fall, a certain diminishment in the Shekhinah, in the goodness, the light, the brightness of God in this world. But then when it comes back, it's always commensurate with the darkness. Since on the month of Av, we have the greatest fall of the Shekhinah, of the Jewish people, where we were just sitting on the floor. We were in the darkest moment. So from the darkest moment comes the brightest moment. And to add to that, the chiddush and the novelty of this Yerida Tzairech Aliyah regarding to Tu B'Av is in the swiftness and in the quickness of this ascent. In other words, to a certain degree we say that how long, what's going to happen? There was a Golus. It says that the Nevi'im came, the prophets came to comfort the Jewish people. Hashem sends the prophets to comfort them. Nachamu, Nachamu. It says, Aniya Sa'ara Loi Nochama, the Jewish people, they don't accept the comfort that God sends them. They reject it. They say, we don't want to. So the Navi comes back to Hashem, and the Navi says that the Yidden don't want, because that's the second Haftorah, V'toimer Tziyai Nazivani Hashem. Hashem has forsaken us. Why is He sending us prophets? We're not interested. We're not accepting the comfort of the prophet. So then the prophet comes back to Hashem and he says, Aniya Sa'ara Loi Nachama, that the Jewish people are not comforted. So then God relates to the prophet to say that the comfort is not coming from the prophets, it's coming directly from him. Anoichi him hu menachemchem. I myself am your Nachama. That's the sequence of weeks. And finally we accept it like 7 weeks later, Tasis Pashem, Tagal Nafshe Belokai. The Jewish people are singing and rejoicing because of the tremendous, great, light that they've achieved. So that's a 7-week process. So that's, on the one hand, you have the Yerida, you have the fall, the 3 dark weeks with the Haftorahs that are harsh, and then you have, bit by bit, we're rising. But the Chiddush of Tu B'Av is that we rise unexpectedly, instantly, from the deepest pit to the highest heights. Because the 15th of Av, when is it? It's barely 6 days, barely a week, not even a week after Tisha B'Av, and there's no greater Yom Tov like the 15th of Av. So that's the Chiddush of the 15th of Av over the other process. The other process, Taka, we rise very high, but it's gradual. Here it's not in a gradual ascent. And we have to understand and appreciate that Mashiach's coming can happen suddenly. Even if you might be thinking, okay, what's going on right now that should be showing that we, the Jewish people, even though this year there was a lot of things that happened, amazing things that happened. But still we want to say, what happened this week that suddenly right now, tomorrow or tonight, I should expect the Beis HaMikdash, or even today, or even in 15 minutes, in 10 minutes, in 5 minutes, in 2 minutes, in 3, in 1 minute, in a half, in 30 seconds, we should expect the third Beis HaMikdash and the Geula. We can't imagine that. And the answer is, snap. Doesn't have to take any time. It's the infinite power of the redemption. It comes immediately. And that's the power of Tu B'Av. That's what Tu B'Av illustrates and conveys, that the aliyah of the Geula, the elevation of the redemption, could and should happen instantly. Any case, this aliyah Samalchus that happens on the 15th of Av, this will also explain, since it's the elevation of Malchus, it will explain the connection of the 15th of Av to Yom Kippur. The sages say that there is no Yom Tovim to the Jewish people that was as great as Yom Kippur and the 15th of Av. The girls would go out, the daughters of Jerusalem would go out into the vineyards, and they would dance. Dafka these 2 days. But what's the connection? So why is it the 15th? And we mentioned earlier, 15th is when the moon is full. But there's also the number 15, which in Hebrew, the number 15, we say tu, tes vav, because we don't want to say God's name. But the 15th is really the first half of Hashem's name, Yud K. Now we know, generally we know that Yud K is Chachma and Bina. And the Vav Hey is the Vav of the six midos. There's a Er Anpin, and the Hey is Malchus. So usually when we speak about Malchus, which is the moon, it's associated with Vav Hey, which should be the number 11. But in this case, we're saying that it's the day related to the moon, so it's a day associated with Malchus, because the moon is Malchus. But yet it's the 15th, which is associated with the name of Yudke. Why is that? Because that's the whole idea. When Mashiach will come, Malchus is going to be elevated to the level of Bina. The lower Hey of God's name is going to be on the same level, the same expansive level as the higher Hey of Hashem's name. So it's going to be, and Hashem's name is going to be Yudke, Yudke, Bayoimahu Yiyeh, Yudke and Yudke. That just like Bina that receives the intense light of Chachma, which in Chachma the Orein Sof is present, dwells, so too when Mashiach comes, the lower Hey, which is Malchus, which represents the whole world, and even the dark world, will be receiving God's light on a much, 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 much superior level, on a level of Yudke. It'll be Yudke, Yudke. And that's hinted to that on the 15th of Av, Aliyah Malchus, Malchus rises to the place of Bina, like mother, like daughter. The two of them are on the same level, and she receives directly from the Yud, and that represents the third Beis HaMikdash and all the great revelations that are going to be at that time. Because, and that's why the connection of Tu B'Av also to Yom Kippur. Because Yom Kippur, there's also, we know, that if you look in Kabbalah Sfarim, the whole idea of Yom Kippur, especially by Ne'ilah, the end of Yom Kippur, it's Aliyah Malchus. Malchus rises to places that she never ever rises ever any other time. And that's the reason also that the girls of the Jewish people, the girls would go out wearing white gowns. On Tu B'Av and on Yom Kippur, they would go out wearing white gowns. Why? It's the significance of the white gowns. And that's because on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol is dressed in linen white clothing. You hear this gewaldige thing? So every Jewish girl is wearing the clothing of the high priest. She's going out in a white linen clothing. This is the idea that the Kohen Gadol wears only white linen clothing on Yom Kippur. This is Aliyah Malchus to the highest levels. That's what it says. And this white garment, you hear an amazing thing? This bad of the 15th of Av is taken from the sack clothing that we wore on Tisha B'Av. Because take a look at an amazing thing. I'm sure you didn't hear this ever. When you take the word sak, it says, when we mourn the temple, we're sitting in sack clothing. And I think it actually says in somewhere in Eicha that it says, Besulas Yisroel, Lifshu, she's wearing sak. She's wearing a sackcloth. When you take the letters of sak, which is shin kuf, and you switch them with the atbash, you switch it with the atbash system. So shin is the second to the last letter. It switches with a bays. So from shin it becomes the bays, and kuf is the fourth letter from going back. Right? Taf shin reish kuf. Kuf is the fourth letter. Switch that with the fourth letter going from the front, which is a dalid. So instead of the sak, you have the word bad. And what does it say about the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur when the pasuk says he should wear linen clothing? Soines bad kodesh yilbash. A holy linen shirt he should wear, make out of linen. And the word linen, the Torah refers to it as bad. So where are these levushe badim? Where are these gowns from the girls that are dancing in the vineyards? Which is the girl represents the Shechina Malchus, which is expressing itself in every Jewish girl and every Jewish woman, and it's expressing herself that she's wearing these white gowns, which these white gowns are the sack of Tisha B'Av converted into the bad, and that's what we said earlier, that Tu B'Av is a conversion of Tisha B'Av. Unbelievable. For that itself, it was worth to have the whole Mashiach Matters class the whole entire year. I never saw that before. Another interesting thing is, when Yaakov Avinu was hit, it says when Yaakov Avinu was hit in the thigh, and he dislodged his thing, and he got hurt. Which we know that was the power of the Churban Beis Hamikdash, was Yaakov Avinu's injury. Here's an amazing thing. When was Yaakov healed? It says Vayizrach loy hashemesh, when the sun was shining to him. So what is this referring to? This is referring to Tezvav B'Av. Tezvav B'Av is when the healing of Yaakov Avinu's thigh takes place. Hold on, give me a second. He makes a... Because on Tisha B'Av it says, hear this, I never saw this. It says, Al Kain lo yoichlu b'nei Yisroel es gid hanashe. The Jewish people do not eat the gid hanashe. It's called the sciatic nerve. The Jewish people don't eat the gid hanashe. So the word es is Tisha Av, the 9th of Av. That's brought down 42 in Derech Metzasecha Isser Gid Hanashe. Shegid zeu echad meshasa shoylet b'Tisha B'Av. That's interesting. And the reason, and it's an amazing thing, we know that there are 365 blood vessels or veins. And this nerve, the Gid Hanashe, that's the vein, and this 365 days of the year. So that's the day of the Gid Hanashe, is Tisha B'Av. And that's why the Churban Beis Hamikdash happened. And because Binyan Yerushalayim is called Netzach. And this Gid corresponds to the Netzach of Kedusha. So this is an injury in the Netzach. And just like by Yaakov Avinu it says, Vayizrach lo hashemesh, that the sun shone to him. So the Eibishter is also going to heal us. Okay? So this healing takes place on the 15th of Av. So anybody that needs a refuah shalema and healing because of some kind of golus injury, whether it's physical, whether it's psychological, whether it's at any level, should know that now, we're entering into the 15th of Av, as the 14th of Av enters into the 15th of Av. There should be complete healing. Okay. Now let's continue over here. This is also the reason why the 15th of Av is also the time of marriages, time of shidduchim, of getting married. Why? Because this is the time of the shidduch of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Knesset Yisroel, between Hashem and the Shekhinah. Because on Tisha B'Av, the Jewish people, what's the connection? Because on Tisha B'Av, the Jewish people were divorced, or like divorce, kicked out of that, like a get, which is the opposite of marriage between Hashem and HaKadosh Baruch. And on the 15th of Av, which the 15th of Av is the filling of the moon, that's the time of the marriage of Yidden, and the Eibishter takes the Jewish people back. And the Shleimus and Nasi and the Shleimus of marriage that happens on the 15th of Av, as we said earlier, is more than the 15th of every month, because it's always, the Aliyah is commensurate with the Yerida. And this too, the 15th of Av, is similar to Yom Kippur. Because by Yom Kippur too is the inyan of marriage. Why? Same idea. Because over there too there was an idea of a divorce. Why? Hashem get married to the Jewish people by the giving of the Torah. After that we made the Egel, and when we made the Egel we were unfaithful to our husband. And that caused that the Jewish people were banished from God. On Yom Kippur, Hashem reconciled and he came back into the marriage, lovingly into the marriage, and he gave us the second luchos. So again, it's the coming back after a divorce, after a breakup, a return after a breakup. And this is the return of the 15th of Av, which is a very, very, very powerful time. So these are all the milas and the greatness of the 15th of Av. And this is the reason why we say that there wasn't a Yom Tov to the Jewish people like the 15th of Av and like Yom Kippur. Because the Yom Tov of the 15th of Av is greater than all the Yom Tovim, even than Pesach and Sukkot. Because the greatness of it comes after the fall, and in this day, it shines, this day contains within it the illumination of the future. It's a futuristic day. It's a day related to the great light of the future light. This is also the reason why we say that on the 15th of Av starts to weaken the power of the sun. Chama, the sun, represents, it doesn't say Shemesh, it says the sun. Chama. Chama shows on the other side. Because the nations of the world, they count to the Chama, to the moon. And in the 15th of Av, it brings a weakening, which is similar to the idea that the Klippas are going to be broken and weakened and destroyed in the future. The power of the moon rises, the power of the nations weaken. In Europe, tonight, or already soon, it's going to be the eclipse of the century taking place on this Tu B'Av, the longest eclipse. I didn't read the article yet, I have to go read it, but I saw something about it. And I'm sure it's an amazing thing, Dafka in Europe, which is such a, if you talk about the nations, blood-soaked nations that have persecuted the Jewish people. So this Tu B'Av, may it already be fully revealed. That is the inyan that I wanted to share. The other thing is, share with you a beautiful story that a Yid just told me now that gave me a little chills, related to a marriage after a breakup. This was in the early 1940s. I don't know exactly when it was, but in the 1940s. There was a bacher who was learning in Taim Chetzmimim in Lubavitch. And he was a simple Jew. I mean, his father was a simple Yid. He was at the Tamim learning in yeshiva. And he got engaged. So they made a l'chaim. They made like a vort, a l'chaim. The father in the chassan worked in a shlachthois, which is like a sheichet. I mean, he was a sheichet, or he worked over there in like a butchery. And after he never knew about a l'chaim, what, where, and when. So the other mechutin, the father of the bride, was a rav. It was a rabbi, an important, chashuv rav. So it came to the l'chaim. This guy showed up in his clothing straight from work. He didn't go home. He didn't realize that l'chaim is a significant situation. So he just came straight from, and basically the whole room was smelling from the butcher shop. The rabbi got very, very, very offended, And he said, if this is the mechutin, I'm breaking the shidduch. So he picked himself up at the l'chaim and he walked out. Him, and obviously if he left, the whole family left, the daughter left, and it was oy shidduch. The bacher was very, very heartbroken. Very, very broken from this. So here's an amazing story. Talking about Yom Kippur, talking about the Kohen Gadol, talking about the previous Rebbe, who was already dressed in his kittel and his talis for Nila, not for Nila, for Kol Nidre, Erev Yom Kippur. And he called in Rav Mentlik. Rav Mentlik was the Rosh Hashiva of Temchat Tamimim. And the Friedrich Rebbe said to him as follows: I want you to go to the father of the girl. I want you to go to the Rav, and to travel, to go, I don't know where it was exactly, go there, and give him over the message. That you tell him you're a shliach from me to give him over this message, that I am telling you that I am the mechutin in this chasana. I am the mechutin. Imagine that. At that time, right before Kol Nidre. I'm the mechutin. So he went back to he says, Reb Hershel, this story I just heard from Rav Zilberstrom, who heard it from Reb Hershel Chitrik, Ziknei Chassidim. He said every time he would tell the story, he would cry. And he said, Rementlik, if I know him, he said, after the fast, didn't even break his fast, because if the Friedrich Rebbe sent him, he wouldn't take even a minute. And he went, came to the father, and he said, and the father saw him, he said, Rementlik, what are you doing over here? And he said, I come with shlichus of the Friedrich Rebbe. And he said, the Rebbe gave over that he is the mechutin. And as soon as he heard that, he said, if this is the case, so it was Siman Tov, a Mazel Tov, it was back Chasana, the whole thing was reestablished. So we have to know the Eibishter himself is the mechutin for every single one of us. So even if we've had any type of breakups with God, or any types of aspects of whatever, everybody, in their own way, spiritual downs, this kind of downs, this kinds of downs, you're a little upset at the Eibishter for whatever thing. If you chas v'shalom can imagine God has been upset at you for any reason. So realize that the Eibishter now is in a state of reconciliation to each one of us individually and to the Jewish people as a whole. And we merit already that this Tu B'Av should be the greatest simcha ever, ever, ever. Let it be this Tisha B'Av. May it be Ameinu. I know the class is a little shorter. Today I was just a little bit discombobulated, but I think the content itself is worth, even if it was a little shorter. Be'ezus Hashem, we're going to reconvene Be'ezus Hashem in Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. Hopefully I'm a kohen. I hope I'll be working there, so I'll be able to maybe snatch a couple of minutes to talk and give a little Mashiach Matter share Be'ezus Hashem next week. Zayga benched, and only good.
Amen, Salah.
Oh,
Thank you
I
so
was
much.
waiting for you to unmute. Thank you. As I spoke on Shabbos, Koil Chassan v'Koil Kala.
Amen.
Thank you.